What's up, everybody? Jensen Cummings here. Thank you, as always, for tuning in. This is Best Served Podcast 180. We're talking Go Compostable with David Fridland of Eco-Products. David, thanks for being on the show.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it, man. It's great to be here.
All right. This channel, Best Served Smart, where we really focus on smart kitchens, technology, innovation, tools, equipment, the resources that the restaurant industry needs to continue to evolve, especially needed right now as there's so much turmoil within the industry, within the business model itself. So David Fridland, Sustainability Maven with Eco-Products, and you guys are based up in Boulder, Colorado. Sustainability, I actually want to start there. It's a word that gets thrown around a lot. It's a buzzword, absolutely, and nobody knows what it means. So sustainability, give us that, like for you, from your position, from your company, the work that you're doing, sustainability, what do we need to know about sustainability? The word, moreover, the effort.
Yeah, for sure, man. Yeah, I mean, sustainability, right? A lot of people think of it in different ways. And I think it's important to keep that in mind that it depends on what metric you want to weigh, right? If it's around food waste at your restaurant or at your business, maybe that's what, you want to target and tackle to be the most sustainable. Maybe it's using post-consumer recycled content, packaging and items, right? If that's what's most important to you. So it can mean a lot of things to a lot of people. The big pillars, right? Economic, social, environmental, all of those play into sustainability. So it really depends on where you're from, where you're coming from, and where you want to make the most amount of impact.
Yeah, and what big takeaway from that, we all have a role to play. Whatever part of the ecosystem, the economy, whatever part of culture and commerce that you are in, you have an impact. Some have massive impact, and you hear about them a lot, be it in the restaurant side, be it big agriculture, be it cattle ranching gets thrown up there a lot. So that all the way down to your tiny little 4-person restaurant operation, your food truck, everybody has a role to play. It can feel big and heavy. And so I want to kind of break some of that down a little bit and just talk to restaurants who are using products like Eco-Products. And just to set the table for people, Eco-Products specializing in, to-go containers that restaurants might use, compostable silverware, tableware that restaurants might use is kind of really a specialty, compostable plates that you might use at an event. So these are the ways that you'd interact with Eco-Products potentially at a high level. Set the table for us. We all in restaurants are buying to-go containers. Hopefully most of us know to stop buying styrofoam. I think a lot of the restaurants, at least that I came up with, we went away from that quite a while ago. But what do we need to be thinking about at a high level? And then I want to really drill down and get granular for people.
Yeah, I mean, obviously you start with performance, right? It has to meet your needs, your application, what you're doing at your restaurant. But once you get through that, it's kind of, what's the impact we're going to have with choosing this package over another? So we look at it in two different ways, and it's all around zero waste for us, right? That's the component of sustainability that we focus on the most. So we have two lines that we focus on. We have our blue stripe line and our green stripe line. Blue stripe's made from post-consumer recycled content, and our green stripe lines made from renewable resources and then designed to be compostable. So we think of it in those two ways. So I would encourage, your viewers to think of it that way too, of what's more important to you, right? Do you have the opportunity to compost? Then you go this way. And so once you get through that kind of, that performance side and then the cost, right? You find where you need to be, then you can kind of decide what's the impact that I want to make? How do I want to kind of try to minimize the amount of resources that I'm using through post-consumer recycled content or renewable? Then at the end of life, where am I going to send that item? Can I compost it? Is it recyclable? Thinking through those two different sides, beginning of life, end of life, as you're making those decisions.
Got it. So the blue line then is basically everything that I just threw out in the yellow topped waste management container that's going into recyclable. Those are post-consumer use products that then are getting recycled and turned into these products. The other side is thinking about different sustainable materials. So sugarcane, I know is one that you see a lot. And so that's a different line. They have different potential uses. They have different trajectories, right? Their outcome at the end is going to be different because one will go back into the recycling system. The other will go back to the soil is the plan there. So I want to touch on that. Performance. This is something interesting. Performance is something, styrofoam or some of the containers that we've used in the past, that stuff will outlive, a nuclear war. Like it's unbelievably resilient. Yet some of the stuff, some of the stuff that I've had even from Eco-Products, like it's a little bit more fragile, and I think there's a thought that has to go behind that. So when you're thinking about performance, like how are you kind of navigating that, working with restaurants to understand what their actual need is from a performance standpoint?
Yeah, and PLA is the plastic that we work with, right? It's a bioplastic made from corn, typically, although some is made from sugarcane as well. And it's turned into this, really good looking item. It's compostable, right? Does a lot of great things, but some of the challenges there, just like you said, it's brittle, can be. The heat tolerance is not always as good. So if you're putting a hot soup in there with a PLA lid on that container, it might not be the right option for you. So just being mindful of and being clear about this polymer, this plastic does have its limitations. That's one of the reasons why it's good for composting, right? It does break down. It has breathability, so the microbes can actually get to it. But you have to keep that in mind. So we try to do our best to make sure folks are educated. They know, if you need a recycled PET lid on this item, maybe that's the way to go for you, and PLA doesn't make sense here. But just making sure that people know what's going to fit what they actually need.
Yeah, so I hear you there. That's interesting, because you may have some items that are your blue series, you may have some that are your green series, and so they're compatible in the sense that you could have one container being of one and then a lid that is something else. Like that works that way for you guys?
Oftentimes what we'll do is we'll have a sugarcane fiber, so it's molded fiber, it's got that papery look, and then we can do either a PLA or a recycled PET lid on there. So the sugarcane base is going to be the same for you, but depending on what you're putting in there, if it's a salad, PLA works really well. If it's something that doesn't get too hot, PLA will work. If it's going to get pretty hot, right, if it's under a heat lamp or anything, we got to make sure it's recycled PET. What I will say, right, and we're going to talk about zero waste a little bit later, I think, but we try our best to make sure that if it's a compostable operation, right, or zero waste operation, you're composting at your site, it can be confusing with the recycled PET lid and the PLA lid. So we want to make sure that you have, that's another consideration, right? You have what you need to run a really successful waste diversion program and minimize contamination going to either the recycling facility or the composting facility.
Yeah, I want to address two things that are knee-jerk reactions in restaurants. The first two things that you'll hear: sounds like more work, sounds like more money, right? Those are the two things. Restaurants are very quick to go to that place, and then the bill always comes due when we don't invest in the things that matter. We see that playing out in the way that we invest in people in restaurants, in our equipment in restaurants, in preventative maintenance in restaurants, in the way that we market our restaurants. So as an industry, we have not always been the best at investing in the things that are going to have the biggest impact downstream, and think about the transactional cost and the transactional effort up front. And so you don't have to be responsible to break down those silos and those barriers. Don't worry, David. We're doing it at every single show, at every single level, because it's really important. But let's talk very specifically about your products. It is more work to compost. It is more expensive to have those products. Give us the why on the effort side. Why is it worth the investment for a restaurant to make?
Yeah, I mean, we could start with climate change, right? It's really critical to get food waste out of landfills. Food waste, when it goes into landfill, releases methane, and that's a greenhouse gas that in the short term has a higher heat trapping potential than CO2. So it's a big deal that food waste is in landfills, and we got to do our best to get as much out as possible, and using compostable packaging as a vehicle to get it from that landfill to a beneficial end use like composting. So that's the first piece, but really more material and tangible on the ground. I think when you survey consumers right now, you'll see more and more people are feeling like this is just what we have to be doing, right? We have to think about the sustainability of packaging. So I think, you're going to have an increased cost. And of course, right now with everything that's going on, increased costs on restaurants is something we need to avoid, right? It's a huge challenge. But I think, if you have that messaging and that vision, right, and your customers and your consumers will see that. And I think they value that, and they want to come to you because you're making a sustainable choice, whether it's post-consumer recycled content, renewable resources. If you go all the way to having a composting system and composting, they'll reward you for that. They're going to come back to you because they feel good about what they're taking away from your restaurant, or what they're ordering from you, right?
David, what you're saying right now is really important. I want to like hover on this for a second and have people really let this sink in. There are absolutely a growing set of the consumer, your potential guests, that will get your product once, and if it comes in styrofoam, they're never coming again. That potential for lost revenue is massive. It is a massive thing. We know in restaurants and in any business, it's 4 times as hard to acquire a new customer than it is to get an existing customer to spend more money. This is very simple sales 101 stuff. And that interaction, especially in to-go, because you can't communicate very, very well like you can in a restaurant when there's butts and seats, your whole ethos. All they see is the food and the packaging, and that tells a story. And you better believe that they are judging you on that story. So that's a very, very important thing from a purely brand and marketing and story standpoint. That's money. So where you're spending 42 cents more per unit on this, yet you're losing dollars potentially on your clientele, your customer, your consumer side. So I think that's an important distinction. So I really appreciate you bringing that up. Cost. Let's talk about that. It sounds like it costs more, so I don't even want to start the conversation. I threw 42 cents a unit out there. I have no idea if that's right. When I'm thinking about the products that I'm currently using and I'm thinking about leveling up to this, where should I be thinking about that from a cost, from a budget standpoint?
Yeah, and it really depends on who you're purchasing, all of your other items through, right? We work with all the kind of traditional distribution channels and some of the smaller ones too, of course. And so it depends where you're getting it from. But, if you're comparing to say styrofoam, yeah, we're going to be a lot higher, right?
Yeah, let's get styrofoam out of the conversation.
Yeah.
But a lot of the just straightforward, simple plastics that we're using in restaurants. Let's start with kind of there. Styrofoam, it's hot garbage, 100%.
Yeah.
So what do you think there? What should we be thinking about? And we can talk generalities on that because I know it's going to be such a nuanced thing in the packaging that you actually have. Am I thinking about 1.5, 1.75, 2, 3 times cost? Like, give me just like an understanding so we can kind of say, okay, that hurts, but not as bad as I thought, or it hurts a lot, so it better really be worth it, and we better tell a damn good story.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you're talking about some of the heavier gauge plastics that people are using, you can come in, especially with a molded fiber, fairly similar. So it's actually, if you're going from those types of items, it's not going to be that much more. But if you're going from, some of the lightweight stuff, it's probably going to be, closer to that 1.5. But we're getting to a point with compostable packaging where we are realizing economies of scale, and so the prices are starting to be more competitive. So this is, in my mind, is the future, and the costs are going to reflect that as we get bigger and bigger and bigger. So the more people that are on board, right, the more we're going to realize those economies of scale, and so the prices are going to continue to get more competitive and more competitive. So it's hard to say right now exactly where somebody would go to. It depends where they are in the country. It depends who they're buying through. It depends what they're going from, of course. But you're probably going to be from close to matching it to maybe 1.5 is probably about right.
Okay, that sounds good. Just to frame people's thinking a little bit, because sometimes if we don't know, we make up stuff, and they're always the boogeyman. So I want to make sure that we understand that thinking. Options within the styles, right? So that was limited as well when it came to a lot of compostables, because again, it was limited resources, the cost to do that, to create molds for 120 line item SKUs versus 61, right? You had to be thoughtful and try and find that spot where there's enough critical mass that then you could expand on your line options, on your line extensions. And so give us an idea there. How many options can we have? Are you guys on par competitive with some of the harder plastics, softer plastics? Are you guys still, not quite there, but we really have enough that fits 90% of the market? Give us a little bit of ideas there on options.
Yeah, our product development team is pretty incredible in my opinion, and they've done a really good job of expanding what we have. I mean, we have over 500 different SKUs that we offer now. Probably almost 300 of those are compostable. So really, we can get you pretty much anything you need. We really pride ourselves on that we're a one-stop shop. And so, if you want to go compostable, right, we can get you there, and our product development team can design something that you need to, right? We do a lot of custom as well. So, I think we're at a point now where it's, they're beautiful items. They look really nice, and they give you the performance that you need.
Custom, go there. I think that's very interesting because
Yep.
we know that brand, especially as to go gets more and more and more, right? I'm thinking about, your cohort at home, and you have the extended family, and somebody goes to the restaurant and picks it up curbside, and
Yep.
they interact with your brand a little bit, but then they bring it home and it's these innocuous brown containers, and they forget where it's from a little bit, right? And we know
Yeah.
that brand recognition is so important for
Critical.
restaurants. And so being able to brand your stuff, right? It was a cheaper option when you could have just a whole bunch of cheap branded plastic bags to put your to-go containers in. We're thinking about leveling up the products that we're using. So where, how, cost, process, give us a little bit of that, a customization.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it can take a little while, right? The process, going through the different designs and all that, being really detail oriented there can sometimes take a little bit of time, but I think, our team gets it done pretty quickly. And then really, I would say, your imagination is the only kind of restriction, right? Um, we can emboss on the lids, we can emboss in the sugarcane items. We can do printing
And
on
emboss real
cups.
quick, what does that mean for people who
Yeah,
don't know what that means?
just basically printing in the item. So it's not just color on the top. It's kind of, putting some texture on the item with your logo or whatever, some wording, whatever you want to put in there. And so especially with the sugarcane bases that you'll see with the PLA or recycled PET tops, right? Embossing on there really makes things pop. So once they get it home and they pull it out, right, you got a full meal maybe on there. It's your logo that's right there, and then your delicious meal that you prepared for them right underneath it. So it looks really good and it can work really well. So we do a lot of custom work, and it's a great way to differentiate yourself.
I think it's important. I think there was a little bit of a stereotype of the brands that had those were like the cheesy big box brands and stuff. Yet I think being smart on brand and bringing that into people's homes is something that needs to be across the industry. Absolutely need to be thinking about it. Obviously, there's significant costs associated with those, but usually, again, economies of scale that you can think about. And as we see the absolute need for that, any way that you can put your brand top of mind, which top of mind in what I want to kind of finish on, which is really your focus, the composting. Restaurants as an industry, we are massive contributors to food waste, massive, and we have to do better. Absolutely, I'll say that categorically. So composting is a way that we can go about that. Again, it sounds expensive. It sounds like it's more work. It sounds like it's for somebody else. We're not big enough. It doesn't matter. We're not going to have an impact. All the excuses. I know that you've heard them all. Now, I also think about the connection between a guest of yours having your product, having the thoughtful packaging, which then has them come back and become repeat, which is important to us. The brand is on there. There's brand association, important again. And now they're making a thoughtful decision potentially, because if they compost at home, now they're associating your brand with something that they thoughtfully do within their own homes. I think that is you're checking a lot of boxes. So I want to set that table. Composting, I have no idea how to do that in my restaurant. How do I do that in my restaurant, David?
Yeah, I mean, it starts with deciding what you bring in, right? If you're bringing in a mixture of items, some are recyclable, some are compostable, some are landfill bound, you're going to have confused employees. You're going to have confused customers, right? If they're able to actually come into your restaurant. And then you're going to have an unhappy composter and an unhappy recycler, because you're going to be sending a mix of items to them too, right? So it starts there. Hey, let's look at what you're buying. Let's make sure everything is going to be approved by the composter, certified compostable, so that it's making a really clean stream. And then you hit the operations side, right? Let's make sure we're communicating what's compostable, make sure the customer knows, that this goes in this bin, right? Which should be easy because you've controlled already what's coming through, right? So that makes it easy. And then it finishes up with, hey, you're sending a clean stream out to the composter. And it's, if you do those pieces, it actually is not, it's not that complex, right? It's not easy, but it can be simple to pull off for sure. And you can do a really, well-run program. And, the costs up front can be, increased costs, but eventually you're moving all that material from the landfill bin into the compost bin. So the volumes are going to be a little bit different. In a lot of parts of the country, landfills are quite cheap. So there still can be an increased cost there, right? Because they're processing that material
Sure.
into beautiful finished compost that we can use on our ag lands and our open spaces in our gardens, so that we make really healthy and delicious food. But it doesn't have to be a huge thing, and we have resources at Eco-Products to help you do it. So that's one of the things we really focus on, is having a team. We call it our operator specialist team. They're across the country, help connecting our customers to composters to try to ease that burden and make it a little bit simpler.
Got it. So you have, well, I want to back up. One thing that you
Yeah.
said really struck me is I definitely see on the consumer side, we've done a lot more educating where people that are going to fast casual, there's a lot of companies doing great works at festivals, obviously not happening
Yeah.
right now, that
Yeah.
we're managing kind of the three different trash. Whole Foods, absolutely. They have pictures on the outside of them all the
Yep.
time. I see people looking at the pictures, looking at their item, looking at the pictures, looking at their item. And so we're training the market a little bit. Yet on the internal side of the restaurant, we still don't have a lot of that training, right? We're still just dumping everything into one trash can. So are
Yep.
you working with the restaurants to understand how, not on the consumer side, but in the back of the house, the way that they are managing that? Are they now having multiple trash cans in the back? And then where do I have enough space? Because I already don't have enough
Sure.
space for one
Yeah.
trash can, let alone
Yep.
three. So give us a
Yeah.
little bit of that for the way they
Yeah.
manage it.
We don't do too much work back at house. We like to bring in kind of best practices and let
Okay.
the chef in the back of house figure it out, because they're the experts back there, right? But we definitely try to lead in the right way. Usually, you can get by with having one bin for films, and other landfill bound items, and then one bin for your scraps that you're just scraping into the compost. So it doesn't have to be that much added space,
Okay.
which is already, of course, super valuable back there. So it can be pretty simple, right? Just compost in one, and that's going to be your big one. And then, you got gloves and things like that. That's going to go in the landfill bin. That can be usually a smaller one, because it's those lightweight, small items that compact really well.
And then you mentioned then getting them connected with a composter. So you have a network of composters across different markets across the country, and then you are connecting them, and then they kind of take it from there, but you're really managing that because you're kind of conduit of communication. Talk about that. So I'm a restaurant. I'm into it. I like the idea of it. I want to
Yep.
use your products. I want to connect with a composter. It's an email. It's a text. It's a whatever. Like
Yeah. Phone call.
here's the gal. Here's the guy. Like, get connected
Yep.
with them and start the process.
Yep. Usually, right, we'll go out and we'll build relationships with that composter, make sure they know, right, which items they want coming through their system, right? If something doesn't break down in their compost site, we want to know that. We want to make sure we're sending them things that actually break down. And then we'll connect with haulers in that area that are sending to that facility, and then we'll just make the connections. Yeah, we just try to kind of make it happen, build those relationships so people can take advantage of those relationships.
I like it. All right, David, any last thoughts? Anything you want to leave us with? This is great. I really appreciate how we gave people some big thinking and ethos, and like, look, there's a need to help change the world literally through sustainability, and what's happening with climate change and our impact. And the restaurant industry is a huge contributor again to food waste. Absolutely. And then also very practical, right? Here's the time that you're going to put in. Here's the money. Here is the effort that you're going to put. Here's how you're going to get more butts and seats. Here's how you get more brand recognition. What are we missing? Any last thoughts that you have? Anything else that will help restaurants really make this decision? Because it's an important one.
I would just say, right, we focus on zero waste, and zero waste is a journey. So anywhere you are on that spectrum, anywhere you are on your journey, taking another step is great, right? You don't have to feel pressure to get all the way to zero waste, 90% or 100% diversion at your facility. Any, positive step you can take is fantastic, and we're happy to try to help you get there.
That's it. David Fridland with Eco-Products. Thank you so much for being on the show. I'm gonna wrap with the audience for just a second longer about really hammering home that we need to be making these thoughtful decisions. But Sustainability Maven, great title, by the way. David, thank you so much for being on. You have a great day.
Thank you, Chef. Appreciate it.
All right, cheers. All right. Look, restaurants, it's here, it's now. We've been talking about compostable. We've been talking about to-go containers for a lot of years. It always was a nuisance because, you know what? We wanted to have people in our restaurants. We wanted to create this dynamic, exciting experience for them. And to-go food it never traveled as well, never translated. What we put on the plate was never quite as good. And so it was always like, we'll do it, but it wasn't a big deal for us. That's for somebody else. And so I think as we think about to go for everybody, it needs to be the same level of thoughtfulness and experience that somebody would have if they're sitting in your dining room. Absolutely. And the ability to connect brand and revenue. This is real money. People will not come back if you are putting stuff in styrofoam. The end. So many places are going to struggle with that. And I really think we need to be thoughtful about that. And yes, it's a huge investment and it's a time suck and people are going to get it wrong and it's more of a nuisance. These things are all true, yet still it's worth it. It's a decision that you need to make, and you need to know that those decisions are going to have an impact, and they can have a massively positive impact on your business and grow the thoughtfulness of your brand and inspire your team and your community and your guests and put more money downstream if we don't think so transactionally on the front end. And I get it. There is no money in the bank right now. I get it. It's still something that needs to be top of mind. Absolutely believe that. So, all right, that is it for today. This was really good. Also, I felt a little preachy there at the end, but this was really good. And I really appreciate everybody for being willing to listen to these type of conversations, because I think they're important and we need to be thinking more about these products on Best Served Smart. You're going to be seeing a lot more of these kind of things. We're thinking smart kitchens, technology, innovation, tools, equipment. You know, we like shiny equipment in the kitchen. We like our knives in the kitchen. We like our aprons in the kitchen in front of house, like these things that are aesthetically pleasing to us, but we want to think about the things that are actually going to evolve and innovate. So that's what we're going to be doing on Best Served Smart. All right, that's it for today. Appreciate you guys as always for watching. Cheers.